Is being a stepfather really a thankless job? I have different viewpoints on, the whole stepfather thing. And I was talking to an OG yesterday, old head, and he was saying, he was speaking on it, it just came up in conversation. He was saying, being a stepfather was a thankless job. And I really didn't get into the whole back and forth with him about anything because the conversation was about something totally different. But it came up. But he referenced Kevin Samuel, so I already kind of felt the rhetoric that he was going to come about was just being reciprocated rather than, being a fresh thought. But it just had my mind wondering, and I want to speak on it today. And I want both sides. I want men and women to speak on this, Let me know how you feel. But is being a stepfather really a thankless job? Many people may say there's lack of acknowledgement. You come into playing the father or stepfather role, and at the end of the day, people don't acknowledge you, respect you, appreciate you, and things of that sort. And is that really true, or is that just a myth? And is it really just the dynamics of that certain relationship, or is that throughout all relationships? Now, if you ask me, I feel like the lack of acknowledgement is through the dynamics of that specific relationship that you may go through. Not necessarily through all, or majority. Because the way the rhetoric is built is that majority of the relationships are like that. And I feel that if majority of the relationships are like that, I believe that is because of the way the dynamics are set up, more so than it just being a thankless job or lack of acknowledgement or lack of appreciation. A lot of people say you're competing with the biological father, but is that really, that could be a problem. I can see how that could be a problem, but I feel like if you claim your role as not trying to be the father, and you're just playing your role, then is that so much of a head-butting situation, especially if both parties are mature, And I feel like if both parties are not mature, if the real father's not mature especially, I feel like that could be an issue. But then again, that leads on to the mother to create the boundary. And this is why I say so many nuances in this, so many dynamics that can go on in this thing that is not a clear-cut situation. That's why I've always said that it depends on who the man is. Do you have respect from the woman to begin with? Because if you don't have respect from the woman and she's not on your type of timing in any kind of relationship, forget if she has a kid or not, if she's a single mother or not, or anything, if she's not on your type of timing and she don't respect you or acknowledge you or appreciate you through any dynamic, then you're going to get the same results. And I think that's why I've always said that having a kid doesn't really sway the situation so much, especially nowadays, because it's a lot of people who are not good people. It's a lot of people who's not going to respect you, acknowledge you, appreciate you, and all those things. So that's why I've always said a determining factor for me personally not to deal with somebody, and I believe it should be like that for a lot of us. But if you're young in your 20s, no, but if you're grown or a little bit older and more mature and you can handle your things, proper discernment of who to choose and who not to. I feel like as you get older, for me personally, a determining factor for me not to deal with somebody is not if they have a kid or not. To me, the determining factor is, are they on my same game plan or not? Do they want to see me win as much as I want to see them win? Are they willing to pour into me like I'm willing to pour into them? Because it's a limited amount of people who feel like that or will do those type of things, unconditionally. Now, I believe unconditional love, yeah, whatever the case may be. But I'm saying it's a certain amount of unconditional love that they will give you. And it's a lot of people who will not give you that. So for me, if a person is willing to pour into me, watch me grow, want me to grow, want me to win, and is on my type of timing and respects me and acknowledges me, but the thing is that they have a kid, is that really a determining factor for me to say, no, I'm not going to deal with them? Versus going back into the dating pool or going back into the world, and now you have to sift through all this mud to find somebody who can still match those same qualities and is, mature to be able to deal with you, is that kid really a determining factor? And like I said, we're not talking about bottom of the barrel women. We're not talking about women who can't handle their responsibilities. We're not talking about women who are loose. We're not talking about women who still in the street. We're talking about real classy. We're talking about real women, just real women. That's what we're talking about. So is that really a determining factor? If she's already handling her business, if she's not really, into it with her baby daddy or the father of the child, is that really a determining factor? And that's what the conversation I've always wanted to have with people. Is it really a determining factor? Versus just being a thankless job. Because you could be somebody's boyfriend, you could be somebody's wife, and you can still not be appreciated. You can still not be acknowledged. You can still, it can still be a thankless job. How many men are in a relationship now where it's a happy home, happy wife, happy life, and you still not appreciated. You still not acknowledged so much, So I think like a big thing of it is just the social perception. The social perception of you being a stepfather. I think we have what I say in the black culture, the black community, it's a frowned upon thing, more so socially. But in many cultures, it's not. In many cultures, is what you do. You take over. Somebody feel it's part of the community. It's more so about the community not falling than the individual. And I think that's what we have to grasp. That's the mindset that we have to start grasping, is that it's not necessarily about the individual. It's not necessarily about the child. It's not necessarily about what you're going to lose out or the money that you got to spend on this and this and this. It's not necessarily about all that. It's about the community. At the end of the day, it's what about the community? And I feel like in certain cases, in certain aspects, we can't be so selfish to say, I won't do this, I won't do this, I won't do this, because you're looking after you. And you have to say, what about the community? What about 10, 15, 20 years down the line? And like I said, it's not about picking up bottom of the barrel women. We're still choosing classy women. We're still choosing women who's ready for the role and is going to appreciate you. But do we still let them fall by the wayside because of these cultural standards that we've put up to be socially accepted? Now, I know the biggest thing is, kids not respecting the father. Kids not respecting, the stepfather, I should say. Which I could understand. But like I've always said, I think it's the mother who sets the tone. If the mother respects you, the mother appreciates you, and the mother shows that from the beginning she leads with that, then I believe the kids will lead with that as well. If the kids is ignorant, the kids is rude, the kids is this, the kids is that, that's just going to be the kids, point blank, period. They like that with everybody. It ain't just you. It's just them. So in those cases, in those instances, I wouldn't even, even if she's a good woman or whatever, because in those cases, if you got pigeonholed into those cases or those situations, in those cases, right? That's not even your main focus or priority, is to be a father. You're the leader of the home. But you don't have to necessarily be their father. And by that time, if those kids are that old and that rude, that rambunctious and all that, you only got a couple more days before they up out the house anyways. What? By the time they do that, 10, 12, 14, you only got to look around the corner and they're going to be out the way anyways, And by that time, they're doing their own thing anyway. So you really married to the mom at that point. And if they're younger, like baby wise, under 4, under 3, under 2 or something like that, then at that point, the baby's not even going to know. So the baby's growing up knowing that you were there the whole time. And if the baby goes to reconnect with the father and all that, I know a lot of men are scared about that. But then again, like I said, you wanted to be the father. I feel like a lot of stepdads who fear the child reconnecting with the father, I feel like a lot of those men wanted to be the actual father, and they resent that. And I feel like you can't resent that. All you're doing is just leading. You're the leader of the house and you're leading and you're showing, this is the way a man goes. This is the way what a man does. You are showing proof. So when this child grows up, this child has proof of what to do, how a relationship can be exemplified. Now, I have dealt with people who, I've dealt with women who had a stepfather and they still resented their actual father, but they have a reference point of what a stepfather does, how a household is ran, and they have high reverence for that man. I have experienced that. But I also have experienced, them still having resentment for their actual father. So it plays many different ways. If the actual father never steps up and never takes accountability and never really shows up, you, my man, you are the actual father. You, my man, will get that respect if the child, acknowledges that, if the mother acknowledges that. And if not, then, then it is a thankless job. But it is because of the dynamics. But I feel like your appreciation, your acceptance, your thankfulness shouldn't necessarily come from the child. It's like, are you doing all this to receive admiration and appreciation, or are you doing all this because as a man this is what you got to do? Sometimes it's just what you got to do. And I also feel like this is, if God aligns these situations for you, if God puts these people in your track, you are here for an example. You are here on assignment. Sometimes, like I said, we're not necessarily here for us. We're here for other people. And you don't know what blessing you might be giving out by just your presence, by you leading by example. Some people may not get that, but, that's just how I feel. And like I said, I see a lot of people who speak out against the whole rhetoric of our stepfathers, this, and is it a thankless job? Because I've heard a lot of people say, no, I love my stepfather. If he wasn't there, then I would have turned out like this. He actually came in and loved me and this and this and this and showed me the way and this and this and this. And then on the other end of the spectrum, where I hear people saying you shouldn't do it, I only hear men saying you shouldn't do it. And it's the same rhetoric about, the same talking points over and over and over. Especially the one thing that I've always heard a lot of, especially, and it comes from a lot of women, and I've heard men say it too, when they say you didn't have to love us, but you did anyway. Thank you. I hear that a lot, where they tell the stepfather, you didn't have to come in. You didn't have to do this. You didn't have to do this. You didn't have to love us. You didn't have to take care of us. You didn't have to love our mother. You didn't have to do this, but you did. And I thank you. And I feel like those type of things hit deep because you're showing proof. You're showing what a man really is. A man isn't selfish. A leader isn't selfish. A leader leads the people. A leader is a servant for the people. And sometimes when you put in those situations, you never know why you put in those situations. I feel like the biggest thing where a lot of men feel like it's a losing or thankless job is because they don't maintain their identity. Now they fall into this whole role of, now I'm playing stepfather, now I'm playing house and all this, which I understand you have to take care of your responsibilities and all that. But again, like I said, you can't lose your identity outside of the house. I feel like if you still maintain your identity outside the house, you still doing your thing, your this, your that, you still the man outside the house that you were inside the house, you still doing your career, your hobbies and all this, you're not going to worry about being unappreciated or drained or being used for your resources. You're not going to feel like that because you still maintain your identity. I feel like a lot of times when you fall into the role, now you start to lose yourself. Now you start looking for that admiration and appreciation and this and this and this and this. Versus just understanding that this is just the added part of your life. If that makes sense. The fuller you are as a man, the fuller you are as always doing something and creating and moving forward, you're not going to be worried about that type of shit. And like I said, it's all, I think it starts with the mother and the father. And if you have complete unity, you're on the same programming, you have the same program, you have on the same type of timing, you have the same clear boundaries with everything, how things are going, you have the same rules, everything is on the same mission, on the same mindset. I just don't understand the rhetoric. I think a lot of it's just, talking points that's just being regurgitated and not really thoughtful or thought out. But let me know how y'all feel. Let me know how y'all feel about this. This is your favorite cousin Rich. Y'all be safe, all right? Love and blessings.